Okay, everyone can hear me good? Okay, perfect. So just to introduce myself, my name's Mitchell. I am here to talk about Overture, particularly an initiative I've been working on for the past 4 months that I'm quite passionate about, called Prelude. And the essential gist of it is that this is a way that we can build out complicated data platforms in a more systematic and incremental fashion. So a little bit of context. I am coming from Ontario, the Ontario Institute for Cancer Research. We are a software engineering team, and we specialize in building out data platforms that help researchers manage, share, and access massive genomic data sets. Historically, we've been involved in cancer research, so cancer data, but we have also branched out into pathogens, including the VirusSeq data portal, looking at COVID-19 viral genomes. Now, we've done this a lot and we've gained a lot of experience. And what we found is that we were oftentimes developing the same basic components of these data platforms again and again. So we wanted to work smarter and not harder. So we combined our experiences together into a suite of reusable software microservices, each with narrow responsibilities. They have an orchestral theme, so you're going to hear a lot of names in terms of like song, score, prelude, and whatnot. Try not to get bogged down. It's going to be kind of a frustration with microservices. It can be complex. The idea of this talk is just what the outcome is, not necessarily the specifics of each service. But the idea here is that all these microservices combine together data platforms. And these data platforms help researchers manage, organize, and share large research data sets. We typically split user groups among 3 different segments. You have your data submitters, so they want to submit data in a validated fashion against a data model that's typically defined by your data admins, such that everything is conformed and proper. You have your data explorers or data consumers. They want to have a front-end UI that they can search through the tabular data and then access a manifest or a file download option. So here, what you can see is there's a faceted search on the left-hand side, a data table that will populate with your results. And what you can't really see is there's a filter facet at the top that will tell you your filter, which gets updated in the URL. So some pretty simple and basic things, but a lot of complicated things going on behind the scenes to ensure that this is a quality resource. And then there's a main focus in terms of my talk on the user group of the data admins. So they're the ones that are going to be setting up these portals. They're going to be defining the data model, and they're going to be defining who can access it and how. And typically, what we've found is that there's definitely a demand now for small teams that have these sort of big data problems. Generating data doesn't seem to be the issue anymore. There's a big problem in terms of the challenge of organizing it and making it accessible in a secure fashion. When I talk about small teams with big data problems, you have essentially 3 people. You have your IT specialist or your DevOps. You have the software developer, and then you have the informatician that is interested in particularly the data itself. Oftentimes, these 3 people can be combined as one very frustrated person or just 2 people. It's certainly a challenge when it comes to thinking about how an Overture platform, which is quite a complicated thing, can be adopted by these small groups. So when we look at Overture as a platform, it consists of 14 containerized applications. There's 7+ configuration files that you need to configure, and about 150 environment variables. And yes, I did count it. It's about 150 plus, and that's not including production, which it goes up from there. What does this mean? It means months of setup, troubleshooting, and tedious manual configurations that are ultimately a barrier to the adoption of a platform such as Overture. So the main question that I wanted to kind of answer with this project is how can we enable research teams to build and deploy their data platforms efficiently and with fewer resources? And that's where Prelude comes into play. It's like an introductory to a musical piece or a song. It's an introduction to our platform. So it is a platform development toolkit that is designed for the initial planning and development phases of platform implementation. I can clarify that in the question period, and I'll probably come back to it at the end. We're not talking about a secure live production environment. We're talking about getting set up our platform with your data on a local system. So the idea here is there's three real main goals. So it's a phased approach to building an Overture platform using your data. It's here to help you systematically verify the requirements. Does your data fit our platform, and does our platform fit with your data? The idea is to, at all possible means, to minimize tedious manual configuration wherever we can, and then ultimately building out a foundation for production deployment so that you know Overture, you know your data, you know how you want to have it deployed, then you can worry about the more specific DevOps variables that can be a lot more vast depending on your deployment context. Okay, so I'm going to run through the 4 phases, but I'm actually going to mainly focus on 2 of them. And again, I just want to focus on the inputs and the outputs of this process. Try not to get bogged down with the microservice names and the technicalities. The first thing here, there's a lot of user experience considerations that have gone into it. So the first thing we want is to do a pre-deployment check. Make sure you have all the prerequisites on your system so that you're set up for success. This is typically Docker, particularly an updated Docker version, as well as Node if you want to work on some of our front-end UI components. We want this to be customizable, so we want you to be able to set up our front-end UI, our UI in a development context so that you can theme it and do whatever you please. The idea is ownership of the platform. You guys own it. So once you go through this and you get all success, then you can run make phase 1. And that's where the automated deployment comes into play. Streamlines the deployment of the services in a way that it checks that each service is healthy and ready to proceed and provides you error logs if there's anything that's wrong. On first thought of this shouldn't happen, but if it does, please complain to me. Once you get to the end of that, it's going to link you to the UI. And from the UI, you can see that you have quite a few options, but the main ones we're going to be focusing on is exploring the data, as well as the documentation and guides. I'm a big proponent of documentation. If you're ever confused in anything that I'm saying, because I have to move quickly, everything is documented within the resource, so you can follow it step by step. And we also have discussion forums, so if there's anything that's unclear, you can obviously contact me. I'll respond to you in the discussion forum and update the documentation accordingly. Okay, so back to our UI. We're thinking about phase 1 now, and the first phase, we simply want to put our data into the front end of this platform. So we're trying to answer this sort of question of how can I configure the platform to display my particular data? So you have a blank slate, an empty platform, no filter facets. This is just kind of pre-populated with some demo data, and we don't have anything configured for the table. So the focus here is actually on only 2 services, so already a little bit minimal cognitive overload. We have our indexing and search software, Elasticsearch, and we have Arranger, which is our search API. There is 2 configuration files of importance here. We need to define what our data looks like for Elasticsearch, and we need to define how we want to actually configure the display names, what the data types are, and what we actually want populated in what order on the front end. So this already is 5 configuration files that can be quite annoying to write. So how do we actually get that in the hands of a user with minimal tedious manual configuration? That's where we have the composer, which is just a CLI utility that takes your CSV file, and then it will transfer and transform it into a mapping file, as well as a base arranger configuration. So this already takes out a lot of the tedious manual configuration. You can look at your data, update the types accordingly, and then you're ready to go. So once you have your configuration files, you kind of have your data sorted. The next step is actually getting it into the portal. So as you can see, we actually don't have a backend database right now. So how do we do that? We do an ETL, which extract, transform, and load our data into Elasticsearch using Conductor, like a conductor conducts the music. So here what we do is we take our CSV and a simple upload command pointing to our CSV file that has the data in a flat format, how we want it to actually be visualized in the front end. And we point to the index in Elasticsearch that we want to upload to, kind of mocking a database in a way. And that will then convert it into documents that can then be used by our search API, and you can view in the table. For you as a user, it's one command. Your data is in the table. You can see it. You can show it to your PI, whoever the decision maker is, and you can start making decisions on whether you want to commit forward or if this is something that doesn't really fit your particular needs. Both are valid options. So that's phase 1. It's displaying data and theming. I'm going to move a bit quicker just because I need to obviously keep it with time. But in phase 2, we now want to add in that sort of back-end storage. So it's how do I validate and store my tabular data, particularly the tabular data. There's a lot of services here that, again, I'm not going to go over in great detail. Feel free to come approach me at any point if you have any questions about any particular one. But oftentimes, we're not dealing with flat files. We're dealing with hierarchical data. So this is an entity relationship diagram. In terms of your data, you would have one CSV as an input for each entity in your one-to-many or however your database is structured. And then you would take this and you want to get it into an actual persistent storage, in this case, a Postgres database. So the first thing we do is we need to define our data model. So all submitters define against the data model to make sure that it is valid. So that is what's called a lectern schema in Overture terms. And we have a composer command that will do that for you. You will submit that to a lectern dictionary. And then you can use Lyric, which is our tabular submission service, to validate that submission and then commit it to that backend storage. Now, what's really nice, and this is the main focus here, is that because we've done the work in phase 1, we can just easily link that using our indexing service and take our work and then just plug it in to this step here. So as you can see, whereas before this was our first phase, we figured out how to display our data. Here we figured out how to store it actually on a back end. Now we can bring those two phases together, and now we have a more complex system without having to manage the burden of configuring 5 services at once. So again, systematic approach in a phased manner. So phase 1, displaying the data. Phase 2, how do I actually store that data and validate it? I'm obviously not going to go into these details because we need to finish the presentation, but the next phase, phase 3, would be how do I validate and store my file data? So we're adding in object storage. So you have one thing, usually clinical metadata or anything about environmental data, for instance, that will be tabular. And then you have the file data, which would be your larger genomic sequencing files or your smaller VCFs. Anything that can go in object storage can be stored by our file transfer service and our metadata tracking service, so on. And then phase 4, which is in gray because this is the next step for Prelude, is how do I control access? We use Keycloak, which is a third-party open source solution for identity and access management, authorization, authentication. Critical to having a secure and deployed platform because you need to protect the data and you need to authenticate who has access to it. But this will be the next release for Prelude. We'll be adding in this phase 4. With about 1 minute and 30 seconds to go, what we get out of this process is between these 4 stages, you're focusing on individual efforts trying to achieve a specific outcome. You get that reward from it. And once you get to the end of this process, you actually have a quite, well, through the documentation, of course, you get quite a complex architecture of software that's fitted and conformed to your data and your needs. And that's the ultimate goal here. This is complicated. We want to break this down simply such that you can use it and it's approachable. So in terms of next step, this is in beta testing. So I want to complete beta testing. Part of that is gathering user feedback. I want to build things that are actually useful to the community. So if you guys have the time and you're interested, please check out the documentation, run phase 1. And if we have a support forum that you can suggest ideas, troubleshoot, tell me what problems you have, tell me you hate it, tell me you love it. I honestly want to hear all of it because that helps us iterate and move in a direction that's meaningful. Adding phase 4, of course, which is the identity and access management. And then beginning what I'm calling the bridge initiative is essentially figuring out, okay, we have a decent idea of what we want in terms of an Overture platform and how it fits our data. How now do I take this environment and get it in a live deployment such that it's secure, while as also being simple enough that it's executable, it's practical, and it's pragmatic. Okay, so getting started, we have docs.overture.bio. We have our support forums as well too, which is all linked from the documentation. And then of course, I'm here at the conference. I'll be here today, I'll be here tomorrow. You can also contact me by email or contact us by our overture.bio email. Happy to schedule a meeting, set up a demo, just chat. We like talking about data and we like talking about your problems and how we can address them. So please feel free to reach out. I'd like to credit all the people doing hard work behind the scenes, Melanie Corto's group at Genome Informatics Group at OICR, and then of course acknowledge funding that makes Overture possible. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have.
Minutes, certainly within time. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to open the floor for any questions. We can take 1 or 2 questions before we move to the next presentation. There's one question.
Thank you. Nice presentation. My question is, what do you expect from your users? They want to use the platform to have as support members in their teams in order to get all this set up without having all type of expertise in terms of development and etc. So if I'm a researcher and I don't have enough personnel from the computer science field, what is the least minimum that I need to have in the team to get this running and being sustained to manage the data afterwards?
Okay, so for the online audience, the question's about technical expertise within the team. What's like the expectations in terms of requirements to actually be able to set this up from 0 to 100%? So from planning to development, I think Prelude does a good job in terms of giving you all the information you need. However, being software engineering, I'm a bit biased. Bioinformaticians don't always necessarily, the curse of knowledge is that it's harder to understand what other people don't know until you're confronted by it. This is a good exercise for that, because then we can see where sort of the roadblocks are. Is it simple things like, well, I'm saying simple, it's a curse of knowledge already, containerization. I believe that most people can, if you can use a command line, you can get from 0 to at least phase 3, because it's all documented step by step. But expectation from going from that to production, you're going to require some DevOps experience. And until we address that, and I can kind of give a good roadmap on it, I don't want to say that just anybody can pick this up and use it. It is complicated software, and it does take time, frustration. It is rewarding, and it is useful, though.